Hello BookTube, welcome back to another video. I am very excited to start with this one because it's going to be a new series that I have been thinking a lot about, and it's centered around BIPOC female authors writing everything but again mostly SFF fiction. And yeah, I am very excited to start this video series. I think I was mostly inspired to start this because I feel like when I've been wanting to search like very specifically, I don't know, queer books written by female authors or science fiction written by, I don't know, Caribbean female authors, like it's sometimes really hard, or like I feel like I don't find a lot of videos with these like very specific um, topics, or I don't know, like category of fiction. And yeah, that's probably more on me and not having the patience maybe to find like this in YouTube or whatever. And I know there's a lot of online lists out there in Goodreads and articles. I'm not saying like this is the first ever um, list of books compiling fiction written by female authors. So this is not at all what that is. But I just wanted to have like a book series where I like over time talk about books that are meaningful to me, that are in particular written by BIPOC female authors, and just save them all in one place where I can point people to when I'm asked or when I want to recommend. So, anyways, I hope that comes across the right way. Yeah. So today I'm going to be talking about three books by authors from different countries, which is also really fun. The first one being Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler from the United States. The second one being Temporada de Huracanes, or Hurricane Season, by Mexican author Fernanda Melchor. And the third one is Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi Dangarembga. I hope I pronounced that correctly, who is a Zimbabwean author. And according to Wikipedia, her book Nervous Conditions is actually the first English book to be published by a Black woman from Zimbabwe. So I think this is a very historical book, and it was fascinating to read. So let's actually start with Nervous Conditions, and this is just, I think, chronological in the order in which I read them, nothing else. So Nervous Conditions is centered about our main character, who is called Tambu, and she is recalling her or retelling her story um, as a grown woman, but most of the story is about her childhood in a rural town in Zimbabwe. And there are a lot of really interesting themes in this story because Tambu is a child who grows up in a rural community that has a lot of needs, both economical and like there are no schools in this town, and there's a lot of problems in her family. And she, or at least this life is contrasted with the life that her cousins have in a Christian mission that I think the uncle of Tambu, I think he's a missionary or like a pastor, and they have actually went away to England, I think, to study. I think both of the uncle and the aunt made like master studies there and came back, and now they're educated and their life is so much better, and they have more like economic means to have a, let's say, better life. And so she is a very good student, and she's trying to improve her standing in life, and she sees her family that was educated, and the power that the education has for social mobility. um, and all of this is kind of put in challenge because for her, searching education and searching a better position in life for her and her family comes also with the price of losing a bit of herself and her customs, her culture, and who she is. So all of that was very interesting. So there's things of colonialism, and in a way, I mean, I as an immigrant can empathize a lot with her, and coming to a place where you stand out because she is invited into this private school where mostly white uh, students or kids attend to, and so she feels very out of place even though she's very, very smart and has won her place. I think she has a scholarship. So she's trying to fit in. And again, she values the importance of education, and she wants to kind of power through that. Uh, but she's again losing a bit of herself, and so there's a lot of coming of age and knowing who she is and finding her identity. So all of that was fascinating. There's a lot that I could relate to or empathize with, coming from Mexico, which is always fascinating. How, I mean, I'm not a woman, I did not grow up in Zimbabwe, and yet I could find so many parallels between her life and what I've experienced or what I've seen in Mexico. So that was very beautiful to experience, I think. And then the last thing that I wanted to mention was that this book is about and centered about women, and there's so many different relationships that are portrayed in this story. You have Tambu's friendship with her cousin, and they are two very different young women, and they are strong and resilient in different ways, because the cousin is like very rebellious, and she has experienced life in London, I think, and so she is maybe not as used to the very strict social norms that Tambu has grown up with in her house in Zimbabwe. And so her cousin is very rebellious and very strong-willed, and Tambu, wants to follow all the rules, and she grew up in this very strict hierarchy of what children need to almost serve unwillingly to their parents. So of that, like, you have this really powerful kind of friendship. You have Tambu's relationship with her mother. I mean, Tambu's parents are a bit of a mess, but Tambu's mom has had to basically carry the entire household because her husband, Tambu's dad, is uh, not a great dad, not very present, and just kind of drunk. So she is powering through all the labor and all the kind of parenting. So you have a very strong kind of motherly figure, even though she's very strict with Tambu, and a very harsh mother as well. But there are a lot of, like, yeah, there is a very brutal reality to this rural community. So you also see that her mom does all of this for her love for her children, and but she's naturally, like, afraid of Tambu going out with her cousins and being educated and, like, leaving them behind. So I think it's a very interesting and complicated mother and daughter relationship. You have a lot of interesting women in Tambu's family, some of them who are, very submissive and passive, uh, and have been just put into these marriages that are awful. You have women that are very strong willed and have a lot of agency with their bodies and their decisions, and they don't care what anyone says. So I think this constellation of women around Tambu make for a very rich story about womanhood and childhood. And yeah, I thought it was a great book, and it put me in a state where I could reflect a lot about different things. Honestly, I think as I was reading, I feel like I stopped very often to just, yeah, think about things. And, like, for instance, just quick example, I found very interesting how in fiction we discuss about this Bechdel test, I think it's called, where you, a way, I guess, or I mean, this is not like an official test or anything, but a way to determine or judge how, active and important women are in a story, is by seeing if there's at least two women who talk to each other about something that is not related to male characters. And a lot of stories don't even pass this test, which, yeah. And it was interesting because in this story, a lot of the conversations were actually about men, or I would say, like, social norms are what it means to be a woman, and all the limitations and things that society builds around that, just because you were born a woman. And so I thought it was interesting, or, it challenges a bit this idea that just because they were talking a lot about the men in their lives and the problems that they are put through because of these men in their life, but how these conversations build kind of empathy and sisterhood, and how they are trying to help each other. So I don't know. I thought it was very interesting to challenge this idea, and a lot of interesting conversations again about social norms and colonization, religion, and growing up. So that is Nervous Conditions by Tsitsi, and a beautiful, beautiful story. I think there is a continuation which I haven't uh, read, but I think this works pretty well as a standalone, so you can definitely pick it up like that. The second book that I am going to talk about is Temporada de Huracanes, Hurricane Season, is what the translation is called, by Mexican author Fernanda Melchor. And I briefly talked about this in my last video, but I wanted to give it a bigger space in this video. And yeah, this book is so interesting and complicated. The book is takes place in a small rural town in Mexico, and the story follows the town after the unfortunate discovery of a local woman in this town that is called the witch. She is found dead by a group of kids, and so you have, I think, 4 or 5 chapters. That is the entire book, and each of these chapters is narrated by a different character, and you get their life story and how they are connected to this witch character, and the role that they play in this town, and the hardships that they've experienced. And so you get this kind of collage of a community, and that is, I guess, the overall premise. The book is very interesting because each of these chapters is almost like a run on sentence. Is that what you call them? Like, you don't really have big pauses. You have a ton of like super super long sentences. So that, I think, could be a bit challenging to read. Um, but there is so much, I would say, personality that comes through the way Fernanda wrote about these people, and you really kind of feel them as characters, and they have very distinct personalities, and the way they speak. I think, I don't know, like, I'm obviously biased because I'm Mexican, but there is so much that comes through through the language, and I think it takes a lot of work and a lot of, I don't know, genius to be able to make a prose that is in that way so beautiful. It's not that it has like beautiful words, because I mean the language is raw, and there's a lot of like swear words, and things are described in very vulgar ways. So it's a very like hard language, but I think there is a beauty in how that replicates a lot of how people speak, yeah, in Mexico, and at the same time how it, shows the like daily language. Um, so it's not flowery, but I would say the prose has this kind of natural beauty to it, and I mean that is also how like people don't speak in these kind of perfect sentences with paragraphs, with information thought through, like how you want to structure your ideas. You just like talk and rumble, and you flow back and forth in time, and this is mirrored by the writing. So I really really like that. Um, but if you're not comfortable with this kind of writing style, I think that could be challenging. The thing that makes the story so worth reading is piecing together how these characters all relate to this witch woman, and how this woman was in a way the center of the community, and it challenges a lot of like taboos, and there is a lot of conversation about gender and masculinity in particular, which I thought was really interesting. I would say the last chapter, the last POV that we follow, was a despicable guy that was, I think, almost crossing the line for me in terms of the things that were being discussed, and the violence that is carried out by this pedophile guy. And yeah, it was really hard to read, but I think, as I mentioned in my last video, Fernanda Melchor is a journalist, and she cares about writing the stories that the media doesn't write about, and all of these families that are and communities that are just abandoned. I think that's I forgot to put my ideas together, but that is, I think, the core of this novel, how a community that has been abandoned by, government, but also how people inside this community have abandoned each other, and how that just, makes obviously a bomb. Like, yeah, it's hard, it's tough, but I loved it. I think about it a lot, and I just feel so much compassion for these people and the hardships that they've gone through and the ways they've been able to deal with them. And this is very real, and I think these are stories worth telling, even though they're hard to read, even though they are violent. But I think in the context of, especially in the context of Mexico, with how much violence is experienced every day and how many feminicides happen every year, I think these stories are more important than ever. And yeah, I think it's just a tough one, but one that is very relevant, and I think more people should read to build more empathy towards others, and also kind of like a wake up call in terms of how we, not just like the government, but we as a society have abandoned communities, and what happens to these communities that have nothing but despair to go through. So, anyways, that was a bit of a depressing one, but easy 5 stars for me. Yeah, and so let's maybe, well, this is not a very positive one either, but let's just finish with Octavia Butler's Parable of the Sower, also a very well known modern classic in the sci-fi genre. Octavia Butler is a Black author from the United States who unfortunately passed away before she could finish this series. So this is actually a duology. She wrote the first 2 books, and then she wrote other things, and she was never able to finish the story. However, from what I've heard, this story, you can really read it as a duology. Even the first one, you could almost read it as a standalone, and I think the second one is also a bit like that. And this is I would say, near apocalyptic, or like during apocalyptic, I don't know how to call it, but this, you follow just when like society is kind of breaking apart, and there is this very small neighborhood where the main woman lives. I think her name is Lauren. So Lauren is a black girl, or like black Hispanic girl, because I think her mom is Mexican, I think it's her stepmom actually who is Mexican. But it's a very diverse community, which was, I will get to that in a second. But Lauren grows up in this walled community, so all of the houses are surrounded by this wall, and they are trying to make the best out of it, while basically the world outside of this community is going to like the hole. And there's obviously, as in any, I guess, apocalyptic story, a lot about how government systems start failing, and how people are kind of on their own to fix like services, water, food. So in this neighborhood, they grow their own food, and they help each other. And so the story follows this young girl who needs to basically make sense of the chaos that is around her, and so she actually starts making her own belief system, or you could even call a religion. Um, and that's kind of where the story takes off. One of the things that I really liked about Parable of the Sower is how this neighborhood, because they all depend on each other to literally survive and like teach each other skills like shooting guns, or like growing crops, or educating the younger kids in the community. They all depend on each other. Well, the inciting incident obviously is that this walled community will not last forever, and at some point they will be kind of forced to leave, or yeah. So what happens after that, and the journey that they need to take to ensure their survival. So Yeah, it was a very, very fascinating read, a very interesting, different take on what a or like near apocalyptic story could be. So I would definitely recommend this, and I'm very excited to pick up the second book, The Parable of the Talents, which I've heard has a lot of relevance in today's political environment, especially with um, what's going on in the United States. So I think that is fascinating. Also, like, it's obviously a coincidence, but the story takes place in 2024, I'm pretty sure. The one thing that I think people discuss a lot when in conversation about this book is this religion of Earth Seed, as it's called, that Lauren starts creating, or this belief system. And that was really, really interesting, especially because she is a very young woman, and this is kind of the way that she can make sense of everything that's going on. And it is very interesting how she like questions religion, like belief systems, and how she uses that kind of to her advantage and to find empowerment in a world where people have lost all security and there is no safety in walls, both like physical but also like how can you trust other people when people are like killing each other for food. uh, yeah, so these I almost feel like even though it's not the main focus of this story, at least I could see how it could be a bigger focus in the next one. Each chapter starts with one of the things she has written about her, again, belief system, and just reading them, I think really interesting stuff, really, really interesting, thought provoking, yeah, like takes on religion and what God could be. I would really, really recommend this. And yeah, again, I'm very happy to start this book series, and I hope that you like it. Let me know if you have any recommendations about fiction written by BIPOC female authors, because I think I want to make sure um, we champion these stories and we give them more visibility, and that is kind of the whole intention about this. So yeah, have a great day and see you on the next one. Bye bye.